Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create and deploy a AWS CDK application creating Cognito User Pool and client in order to be used with your React frontend. And I'm going to be showing you how to take the Amplify JS library from looking like this to looking like this. Not only will you learn how to make the login screen look so much cooler, but I'll also teach you how to implement authentication with Cognito from start to finish in your application. There are some prerequisites to this video that I'm listing on the screen right now. If you haven't got any of these set up, go and check out the prerequisites video that I posted. I'll leave the link in the description down below. And once you've done that, come back and we'll carry on. So I'm going to go to my repos folder, repos, and in here, I'm going to make it for bookshelf-cdk, and then I'm going to cd into that. I'm just going to copy this, and within here, we're going to put cdk init at -- language TypeScript. And this should create our CDK application for us. Now that's complete, what we're going to do is open up this folder in Visual Studio Code. Now we should have our folder up and ready. As you can see, we've got a package.json, we've bookshelf.cdk name, we've got a cdk.json, which has app to point to our bin/bookshelf-cdk.ts. We go and look in there. We see that there is a template in here already. So what we're going to do is on comment already. We can also open up the lib folder and we can see that there is an example stack in here for us as well. So the first thing we should do is just run a yarn in here so that we can install all the required files. Once that's done, we should have our node modules folder installed and those complaints should go away. In the bookshelf-cdk file, we need to uncomment this line here, and this will use our details from our command line that we've already installed. And then let's go in here and delete this code. We can actually delete all the rest of this code as well. So in here, what we're going to add in is our Cognito User Pool. The way we're going to do that is just to do Cognito equals new user pool, which we can import from the lib/AWS Cognito. In here, we'll have this. And in here, we'll have the configuration for our user pool. So what we want for this application is going to be self sign up. We're going to set that to true. We're going to have sign in aliases, which will be email true and username false. This is so that they have to use their email addresses to log in and not their usernames. This will be the standard attributes that we will have on this Cognito pool. So we want email to be required, given names to be required and mutable, family name to be required and mutable also. We then want to set the password policy, which will be minimum length of 8 and some other criteria to meet. And the last two things we want to add is account recovery and removal policy. We want them to only be able to recover their accounts with email only, and the removal policy is going to be destroy. Just going to add these imports from AWS CDK lib and AWS Cognito. This is going to be our construct for our user pool. Next, we want to create our user pool client. So we're just going to import this, and our client is going to set the user pool to the Cognito construct that we just created here. It's going to use the user password flow and user SRP. We're just going to set generate secret to false, and we also want to use OAuth with the authorization code grant flow and in these scopes. And this is all we're going to need for now. And we're going to set our callback URL to localhost 3000 because we're only going to be using this in development. We're not publishing this or anything yet. Great. So the last thing we want to do is output these by doing new CFN output. I'm going to import this from here, AWS CDK lib, and we will output the user pool ID as well as the user pool client ID. So if we go ahead and save that, now we can go ahead and run CDK deploy, try and deploy our application. And that has been successfully deployed, and it's output our user pool client ID and our user pool ID to us so that we can use in our front end application. We can also go into AWS and go to Cognito in order to see our Cognito pool being created. We can see here bookshelf user pool. If I go into here, we can see user pool name, the ARN, the user pool ID, AKCDO. If we just look at that, AKCDO, that's the one that's just been created inside AWS. That's pretty much all we need to do on the backend in order to get our Cognito set up. So the next thing we need to do is create our front-end application. So I'm just going to cd out of this, yarn create Vite. It'll ask me for a project name. I'm going to name it bookshelf, and I'm going to select React. And then for the variant, I'm going to select TypeScript, and it's now created a Vite project for me. So I'm just going to go cd bookshelf yarn as it's telling me to do so. But I won't run yarn dev just now. We'll open it up in Visual Studio Code in order to do that. I'm just going to do code. In here, we can see our project has been set up. We've got a vite config.ts, a yarn lock, a package.json, index.html, as well as our source folder with our main file. I'm going to open up a terminal in here and run yarn dev. Seems the package doesn't seem to be present in my lock file. I need to run a yarn install, so I'm just going to run a yarn install in here. I think this is to do with my new version of yarn I've actually just installed. That's fine, we'll just wait for this to complete, and that's now done. So let's try and run yarn dev again, and as we can see, it's running on localhost 5173. I don't actually want it to do that, so what we're going to do is go to vite config and add in server port 3000. I'm going to save that, and now the server should have restarted and gone to localhost 3000, and we can see here that it's now loaded our application and it's got a counter and some stuff. Cool. So the first one we're going to install is .env as a dev dependency, and we should see that now this has been installed. So what we can do is add a new file, and this file is going to be .env, and within our .env file we're going to define 3 variables, which is going to be region, user pool ID, and user pool app client ID. In here, we're going to set this to EU West 1. Our user pool ID we can get from here, and our user pool client app ID we can get from here also. So let's save that. And then we go into our vite.config file, import the .env config, and define our process.env. It's asking us to install types node, so let's go ahead and do that as well. Types node. Now the error's gone away. This should give us access to environment variables within our Vite application. So if I go into app.tsx and type in console.log, we should be able to see our environment outputted here. So now you can see that we have access to environment variables in our application. So let's go ahead and install the other packages that we're going to be needing, which is yarn add at AWS-amplify /UI-react, AWS-amplify. Whilst that's installing, I'm also going to be just grabbing the material UI installation command. So I'm going to install this yarn add material UI. And then we also need the icons. We're going to add as icons. In order to get the icons working, we also need to add one more config in here. Optimize depths to include the MUI icons material, and save that. Now let's go to our main.tsx file, import amplify, amplify.configure, auth. Region is going to be process.env. Let's just grab all these 3 things that we need in here. User pool ID and user pool web client ID. And then I'm just going to paste in our values like that, and we should have amplify configured. Now we can import our authenticator provider from AWS Amplify provider and wrap it around our app. And then we can start deleting some stuff from our app. Let's just delete index.css, delete app.css, remove this, remove this. Let's remove all of this. I'm just going to do bookshelf. Let's just have that in here for now. Get rid of this, and let's get rid of all of this. I'm just going to change this into a const because I prefer like that. Get rid of this as well now. Okay, so now if we go back to here, we should just see this is now what our app looks like. So what we're going to be wrapping our app in is the authenticator from AWS Amplify. If we save that, yes, it's giving us a login. We want to also import the style.css from UI React. And now we can see that this is up and ready for us to use. So we've got this set up. So let's try and create an account here. So I'm just gonna copy an email, just a password for me. And as you can see, it's complaining, saying that it did not conform to the schema. Given name attribute is required, family name is required. So both these things are required, and we set that up within our CDK stack. As you can see here, we get a given name and family name property of required, and that's why this is complaining. So now we're going to look at how we can customize the screen, make it suited for our needs. So first thing we're going to do is create a new folder called components. And within this folder, we'll create another folder called core. And within core, we will create a component called authenticator.tsx. Authenticator is going to take in props with children. We're going to import from React, and then we will return something here. And that should stop complaining. But what we actually want to do is move over from using this authenticator here and move this into here. And instead of calling it authenticator, we're going to say as amplify authenticator, and we'll put that here like this. And this one, we can now import this from our components folder. So everything should still work exactly the same. Nothing has changed. We can refresh. We're still right here. However, the next two things we want to import are the Amplify theme provider and theme. So we'll just save that, and we'll wrap the whole application in the Amplify theme provider. This will allow us to customize the theme on the authenticator component. In here, you can see that this takes in a theme, and let's just declare our theme by doing theme, which requires a name, and we're just going to call this bookshelf. And that's all it needs really. So just set that to theme. Let's check that everything's still working. Everything looks good. Now we can start to customize what this is going to look like. So before we start working on the actual styling itself, what we want to add is some configuration to the Amplify Authenticator itself. I want to change the variation to modal, and I want to add in these sign up attributes also. If I hit save on that, we can see that now this has changed into a modal instead of just being fixed page. And if we just refresh the page, we can see that if we go to create account, we can now also enter in given name and family name. This still looks quite wrong though, because we don't want the user to be able to type in username, or we want them to enter in their email every time. And I don't really like the wording of given name and family name. I prefer first name and last name. So we'll also go ahead and change that. And the way we'll do that is by adding in form fields into here. So for form fields, we can pass in the values for the sign-in page, and we can change username to use the label email instead, and placeholder is changed as well. Same thing goes for the sign up page. We can change the label and placeholder for each of these different fields. So I'll go ahead and save that. I'm just going to refresh the page. We can see that now this asks for an email address, email password, confirm password, first name and last name. I'm going to try and create that account again. I just click create account. Now it's sent an email to this email address asking to confirm. So if I go and check the email, we can see that we've got an email come in with a verification code. Go back to our app, paste that in, confirm. And as you can see now, we've logged in and it's signed in. If we inspect, and go to application, go to local storage, we can see that we've got some access tokens and other things being stored in here. Those are user's identity, different type of things like that. This user is now authenticated. Actually, we need a way to sign out. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add in a link here, or let's just add a button from Material UI. And the way we can log out is by using the use authenticator hook, which we can import from UI React like this. And we can see we'll add an on click to this, which will be sign out. We can use the user detail to put in user information. I'll just leave that for now. So if we can go here, we can see the logout button, and if we just click logout, then it clears the application and the user is no longer authenticated, and we can try and sign back in if we need to. So now let's go ahead and style this to make it look a little bit nicer. If we go over to Authenticator, what I'm going to look at is the components property, which basically allows me to declare a bunch of different components that's available in this authenticator, like the footer, the header, sign in, sign up, and I can completely replace them with my own components. For now, I'm just going to do the header. I'm going to import box from Material UI, as well as typography. I'm going to create a typography with a variant H4 for my title. And my box is just going to be a box with rounded edges, some padding, a background color of black, and being centered in the middle. I save that. Now we've got this bookshelf header on top of the existing modal, and I'm going to do something similar for the footer. Will allow me to have a bit of a bottom border here as well. So now I've got a rounded box instead. Now we can go ahead and start customizing our theme. I think it's worth mentioning that the Amplify Authenticator has some documentation around this, and you can always refer back to this in order to do some more learning and find some details on how to do the theming in here with values on how their theme actually works. So as you can see, there's this object called tokens, which you can overwrite and change the colors and the components. That's what we're going to be using today. You can also use override as well, which completely overrides different components, but we don't want to be using that today. We're just going to be using the tokens to try and make it as consistent as possible across all the different components within the authenticator. We're going to look at tokens and the colors that should be. Within colors, we want to set the primary and secondary colors. So the way we do that is by expanding brand, and then within brand, I'm going to set them to these colors. So these colors that we have here are colors that are already being provided by Amplify. As you can see here, if we go to colors down here, they have a list of all the different colors that they have available. I'm using overlay for my primary color and neutral for my secondary color. There's a reason I've made 90 and 100 both black, and I'll explain that in a second once we get to it. So just changing those alone, you can see that it's already looking a lot better. It's starting just to feel a bit more like my theme. But this still doesn't look like exactly how I want it to look, so I want to drill down a little bit further and modify it even more. I also want to change the font color for secondary, which is going to be, I'm going to set it to my primary color of 90, which is black, and that's going to make this color a bit darker, make it black. The reason I'm using secondary here is because I've actually inspected this and figured out that secondary is the value that affects these colors, and that's why I'm using that. You can also just inspect these yourself to see what values are being used. You can see here Amplify label is using field label color, which points to Amplify colors font secondary. So that's how I know it's using the secondary. So if I change that to this color, now you can see now it's set that to black, which is the color I've set the secondary color. Next thing I wanted to do is change the radius of these buttons and inputs. For that, I'm going to add in a configuration for the radii, and I'm going to set small to value of 0.75 rem. And now you can see it's added a little bit of border radius to my input, which fits a bit more to my theme of what I want. There's also here medium, XL, XS, different values, and same as before, you need to figure out which ones are using which things. Now we've kind of set already the main premise and the global styles for everything in here. We need to narrow down really on all the different little bits that we want to change. So in order to do that, we want to access the components property on tokens. So on here, we have access to a range of different components that make up the authenticator component. So the first thing we're going to look at is the authenticator itself. I'm going to change the modal background to the value of blue 40. So if we look at that now, the background's been changed. The next thing I want to do is get rid of this border around this box here. So for this, I'm going to change router to border width of value 0. You can see now that border is gone, already looking a lot cleaner. The other thing I want to change is the color of the tabs whilst it's inactive. You can see it's kind of like this off-white grayish color, and I just want it to be black when it's not selected. For some reason, saying the inactive state of Authenticator is the only way to do this. I'm going to set it like that, and as you can see now, it's completely black when it's not being selected. Don't worry, we'll fix this as well. Now we're done with the Authenticator, we can move on to looking at tabs. We are kind of limited here to what we can do. As you can see here, state inactive for the authenticator. I've had to access this in order to do this. I wasn't able to set this in tabs because there are different components overwriting different things. Again, if you want to rewrite it completely yourself, then you have the option to override the components in here and have your own custom components completely. But for the sake of this video, we're just looking at how we can style it and modify it a little bit without giving ourselves too much work and having to manage too much code. So within tabs, we want to access the item property, and then for the item, I want to set the border color and the color to black and white. Now if we have a look at that, that's looking a little bit better, but we can see it's still behaving a bit weird when we're hovering over it and when it's selected. We don't really want it to look like that. It doesn't look great. I don't like how this white is clashing with this. So I'm going to access these other properties, which I can access in here, which are the active, focus, and hover properties. So for active, I'm going to set the background color and border color. So the background color will be black, color will be white, and border color will be kind of white. So now we can see when I've selected it, it's still black. It's just got the border on it, and we can switch between these like that. So when you've selected it, it still has like focus on it, and that's why it remains black. And this happens both when you hover over it or you have focus on it. So we're going to set the focus and hover to secondary 40 as well, which is more like a grayish white. And if we go back to here, we can see that now we've got sign in and create account, and that looks a lot better. So let's go ahead and sign into our app, and our app is still looking like this. I am just going to show quickly how we can use user to put out the user's name. So to do this, I'm just going to add in a stack from Material UI and set the direction to row, and I'm going to do justify content space between. I'm going to change this into a link. Get rid of the button. Don't need the variant. Just going to set the color to primary for now. Let's have another stack. Just justify the content on this end, and we can add in typography. We want to user.username. We'll do user.attributes.given name like that. And as we can see here, we've got the title and we've got go on and log out. We can just get this a little bit of a spacing as well. You can see we can log out and we can log back in. We can also obviously add in the surname here as well by using family name. And as you can see there, it's come up. In the next episode, we'll be looking at how to build this custom app header using Material UI and also implementing React Router DOM. We still have plenty more to cover. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to see more videos from me, and please let me know down in the description below if you'd use Authenticate again for your next project now that you know how to customize it and style it to do different things. I'll see you next one. Peace.